longevity via subsequent video streaming, satellite and cable TV, DVD rentals and sales, and other distribution outlets to reach niche audiences seeking alternatives and more variety of entertainment choices. So he says, award ceremonies. Well, I am neutral about them. If you think it has value, then whatever floats your boat. So, hey, Ron Cole is here. Glad to see you guys. So yeah, I don't know, the award ceremony, unfortunately, of course, I don't watch them, and in fact, if I hadn't read Leo's blog, I probably wouldn't have known that they lost. I didn't know they were nominated to begin with, but I don't know what you guys think about that. Personally, I think it probably helps if they did win. I think that if Leica had a few more awards under its belt, it could help potentially, in the future with investors. That is, if Phil Knight doesn't, continue to put his profits into the films. But I don't know. So I mean, Leica is just, they're sort of on the edge. They kind of do whatever they want, and they have almost unlimited supply of money. But you have to wonder how long will Phil Knight keep financing films. So I think awards would help that. If they did stop personally financing films out of their own pockets, yeah, it would be pretty good. So my opinion is maybe Leo's advice is right. But anyway, Leo, of course, has a lot of opinions that he shares. A lot of things which are somewhat dualistic. I guess he did post this write-up about Phil Tippett, which was really good, and we covered that last week. And also the box trolls. There's a great time-lapse, of course, that you guys have probably seen, but he posted it on his blog, probably one of the first people to do so. So definitely check out his news page, and make sure you click on the news up here, and that's basically his blog. And give it a read. You might like it. So all right. So moving along, this is a site that recently, I guess it was one of the 2D traditional animation fan pages on Facebook that I saw this. And somebody posted it up. I think it was one of the animators who had worked for Disney had posted this. And I don't really frequent the 2D animation sites as much as most 2D probably animators do every day. They probably have their own niche, as Nick would say, or not Nick would say. What am I saying? Leo would say, because he uses the word niche all the time. They probably have their own niche message boards and things like that for 2D animation, similar to our site and stopmotionanimation.com. And so, I don't really find these sites very often, but I saw this and I thought, this is a really great resource, even for stop-motion animators. And if you want to find it, it's at FrameXFrame, so it's FRAMEEX, frame again, .tumblr.com. And the way they set it up is sort of in a it's a nice little setup. What they basically do is they show individual frames of animation that you can study, and then they put it in a GIF form, and you can see how it looks when it's animated. And they just they just loop it, and so you can see how everything looks as it moves, and you can study the eyes, the nose, the lips, the chin, shoulders, the hand position, anything you want to study. Frame by frame, right? So that's why they call it frame by frame. But so why is this important? And a lot of new animators, let's say you're born in 1990. I'm going to call you a new animator, okay? Because you're pretty young. And if you grew up with only DVD players, some DVD players have a frame by frame pause button. But most DVD players don't go frame by frame. They actually skip like 10 frames or 20 frames, or sometimes you hit the fast, the skip frame button, and it goes, to the next group of scenes, or however the DVD is formatted. It just depends. So when I was growing up, of course, we had VHS tapes, and I imagine Stopmo, Nick, and Ron Cole, you guys had actual film strips, 16mm films that you could buy and you can examine on like a moviola. And so there's different ways of viewing animation and studying it. And so VHS is what I grew up with. So for me, it was, a matter of flipping through each frame. I would get like a California Raisin TV special or VHS or whatever, put it in there, and you would freeze frame it, and each frame would show up, and it would have all these like little lines and stuff wherever the play heads, the actual recording and play, it's like a round metallic disc that spins over the tape over and over and over again. And as you freeze frame it, you can actually ruin your tapes, because you'd have this spinning head reading the data off of the tape in one spot, and it would just spin and spin and spin and spin, kind of like like you're grinding off the information off the tape. So it was very hard to actually go frame by frame sometimes with VHS, and there were certain VHS players that you could actually had dual heads, and you could get a better image every time you went frame by frame. So that is how I basically learned how to do animation, was by going frame by frame through animation. Now, if you're only on computers, if you grew up and you don't really use DVD players, you just watch YouTube videos, YouTube doesn't allow you to do that at all. The only way you can do it is to basically download it as a QuickTime and flip back and forth through the frames. So there's ways to do it, but if you're not really used to doing it and you've never done it, it is extremely helpful to do. And so I'm going to click on this image here, and this is from The Little Mermaid. Now you can click the right side of the frame and the left side, and I guess it doesn't matter. You can't, I guess, yeah, so you just keep clicking. I guess if you go all the way on the left, it goes back, and all the way on the right goes forward, so you can go back and forth. It's not very quick though, but so what you do is you can actually see and examine how far did they move the eyes, for example, per frame. Now we know that this was at 24 frames per second, and hopefully they broke it down into individual frames here, and this isn't skipping frames. But if you want to learn timing, it might not be the best way, because I don't know if they did skip frames here. But we're just going to go through these here, and you can see how you can study each and every frame. Some of these, I guess they did. I think they did skip frames here, because there should be some in-betweens. These might be sort of key poses. Yeah, I think that's what they did. Not as good, but that's okay. You can still kind of, you can get the gist of how it would flow. I can hear some sleet on my window. I think it's starting to sleet out here in Springfield. But this is a really great site, and when you look at it, you can see they've got some pictures here as well. I don't know if I can expand this. I don't think I can. Well, I could. Control plus, I think, would do it. Nope, that won't do it. I can't expand it, but you can sort of, they posted some of these, I guess these are, pretty sure this came from the Illusion of Life book here. Somebody seems to have photocopied these and put them together, because this is definitely in the Illusion of Life book. But you can see what they've done. They've broken down all these frames, and you can examine them and see how the legs move and the clothing. So Claymore says, this looks pretty great. I like that website. And Ron says, yep, Super 8 movie reel-to-reel movie editor, and a friend of mine actually had Super 8 projector that could pause and advance one frame at a time. And Ron says, I study live action frame by frame most often. And Nick says, yes, it looks like key poses to me. Yeah, I agree there. And Ice Pick Method says, at least in-betweeners never caught on in stop motion. Yeah, that would be kind of tough. Imagine if you just, yeah, I guess in a way you could have in-betweeners. You could have a key animator do the main poses in Dragon Frame, and then have an apprentice or somebody go in there and just try to fill in all the frames, right? And Ron says keyframes are the easy part. If only someone would invent some software that would. Oh, okay, scratch that, he says. And so Nick admits to everybody. He says, "I didn't study anything frame by frame. I just did it badly. Tried again, and eventually started to learn." And that's a good way to learn, actually, too. But studying things frame by frame for me, I know it really helped me to figure out what animators were thinking. And I think Meet the Raisins, that was one of the films that I really first studied in detail. I think I paused like every single frame in the entire film about 100 times. And some of the things they did were really revealing in terms of you see things on screen and they look natural, and then you go through and you go frame by frame and you realize that some of the things they did were physically impossible, but the physically impossible stuff was out of frame, and then you just kind of realize, oh, sometimes you can pull things off that are impossible. And I think that's kind of what I learned, just studying frame by frame is you can do things that are not based in reality. And it still works. So what is this guy? This guy is from, let's see here. Oh, Wreck-It Ralph. Okay. Have you guys seen this film? A lot of these films I've seen because my son is 6 years old, so we go to the theaters and watch these films. But it's a neat little jumping animation. And it's really cool just to see the poses, like how does he land and then how does he take off? So for example, you look at this frame and you think, well, how would you animate it? He started here. Would you have him leaping where his head goes at an angle forward or straight up, So if you don't know the frame that comes ahead, you can kind of think to yourself, how would you do it first? So you start here. It's going up in this kind of a curve. He follows the curve down, right? So you can see what they call the line of action, which is everything's going in this angle here. The next frame, you can see he gets kind of squished at that angle, and so now he's down. So where would you put his head in the next frame? Right. So if you're a stop motion animator, you got to think of these things. So Ron says, what surprises me most looking at live action frame by frame is how fast some things actually move. It taught me to be braver. Yeah, it is kind of amazing. So where would you guys put his head in the next frame? Would you, knowing how his head was pointed in this direction at this angle going up, and then this angle coming down, would you kind of make like an M shape? So would you have his head going forward and then leaning back as he comes down again? So if I were animating, I would actually put his head forward, right? So that's how my thinking would be. So we click the next frame, and then whoa, look at that. This animator chose to put his head straight up. So if we go back, and you notice there's a camera move as well. But he goes straight up and then to the right, and then he trips. Oh, that's the last frame they show. But you can see here in the animation what actually happens is he trips at that frame. So the animator knew beforehand that he would trip, and so to trip you'd have to go up first. So If he were just to continue jumping, you know, that sort of curve that he would follow would be like an M, like McDonald's, right? So it'd be up, down, up, down. But what he did is he shifted the point where the forward movement stopped all of a sudden because of the way he landed. He landed on the back side of this balloon. And that causes him, instead of bouncing forward, if his feet were on either the top of this ball, that ball stopped his momentum, and so he goes up and then he trips. You see, so if you really examine it, if you look at both the animation as it looks, you can see why the animator didn't animate his head going forward at this frame. So this is sort of the frame where everything kind of, all the momentum stops and goes right into his feet. And so he lost his forward momentum and he falls. Alright, so really a cool sight, and some of this stuff is really washed out. I don't know what this is here. These are pencil tests, but they're so lightly drawn that it's kind of hard to examine these, but there's a few other good ones on here. Some dance sequences as well. And what's really cool is how they can sort of stretch things out in two-dimensional animation, which is something you can do in stop motion, but you'd have to use either replacements or Photoshop to stretch the image. And so Ron makes mention about Justin Rash and how that's one of his greatest strengths, is being, I guess, you know, Justin's more bold of a stop motion animator than most because of his 2D background. And so Stop Motion Nick says that Justin animates puppets like a 2D animator, classic Tex Avery. So here's this short sequence from The Princess and the Frog. I believe that was the last 2D animated feature from Disney. Not last, but they had, I think after Tarzan, was it? They stopped making 2D animations and then they made The Frog, or The Princess and the Frog. So, let's see. Let's see what this one brings up here. So here's another sequence. Nice big images too, which is nice. And what is this from? This is from, I'm not sure which film. There's a lot of comments. Alright, well, that's okay. So here's the animation you can see below. He jumps on the horse and it twirls around because all the weight seems to be on the stirrup. So as he jumps up, again, you notice the angle of his body is similar, like when we looked at the last animation from Wreck-It Ralph, where the character is, you know, Ralph is sort of jumping, and you know, anytime you have forward momentum, you want to have the head of the character forward, so you have everything sort of going in this direction. And this foot here is ready to land in the stirrup, so he's getting ready. And he leaps up, and you can see his hands also go up. So his whole body's kind of, you know, trying to get in an upward position. And here he is sort of in the center of the move, or the jump, where he's kind of floating. Okay, let's go back so you can see how at this point, I'm guessing the center point between here and the stirrup, they've timed it, so they're probably, equally spacing it, where this foot will be right about here. So it's another thing to kind of point out when you're animating is your spacing of things. So you know that you had to get your foot from here to here, and you're going to do it in 2 frames. So the next frame you'd have to move this foot right between the start and this position. So that's what they've done here. And his body twists as well. So what the animator is going to do is he's going to think about where the weight of this character is. And so what he's doing is he's going forward, but he's also got an outward spin to his body. As he lands, all that weight sort of in the shoulders, and you know, everything here is exaggerated. Like there's probably, if this were a real character, would be very skinny, and you know, jumping on a horse probably wouldn't affect the horse too much. But you have the assumed sort of weight of all this shoulder padding and so forth. So he comes down, and he's got this trailing leg, and this cape as well. So this is all sort of trailing motion. And he kicks his leg out. And so the horse kind of goes back, as you can see. And if you think about swinging a ball on a string, all the weight of his leg is going to be spinning around in a circular way, if you can kind of imagine what that would do. And so when he does that, it actually causes the horse to spin. So that's kind of how you break it down, how you try to understand how things will move. You think of their weight, and you can go backwards too, and you can sort of reverse it and say, well, if this leg is spinning in this direction, it's going to cause this character also to spin and jump off the horse. So you can reverse it. So if this were actually forward, he'd move his leg out, and then, oh, he'd be catapulting himself off. And this foot would be the point of mass that would lead the motion, would be here. So all the weight would be going in this direction. So to get back to your comments, let me see what you guys are talking about. So Ron says, I'm not sure if I've ever seen people manipulate stop motion with digital squish and stretch in post-production. I've tried it. It doesn't look so great. Doesn't look so good. It's actually kind of hard to do, but if you do it, the shadows and everything sort of change, and it doesn't look quite right. It sort of looks like you've digitally altered it, at least at my skill level. Somebody else might do a really great job at it, though. Let's see here. So Nick says you can do a little stretch with the armature wire coiled up like a spring, but I've only used it for things like tongues. That's a good idea. It probably looks better if you do it with the puppet itself. Yeah, you could do it that way, and I imagine you could also do it by taking, you know, telescoping tubing from K&S, where you get like brass tubes, either square or round, and you could drill a hole through there, solder a nut and a little hex head cap screw on there to adjust the tightness between the 2 tubes, and you can do it that way as well. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can do it, but I imagine if you use some kind of silicone, it would have to be super soft, or foam latex, but it depends on how that foam would squish, because the paint might sort of, well, it probably wouldn't work out so great. You'd have to maybe airbrush everything, because if you painted on your foam latex, all that paint would just sort of shrivel like a raisin. You know, it wouldn't look very nice. Although on the PJs when I did some tests for Wolverhampton. Thorogood Stubbs, I guess his body was foam latex, and I remember the paint being so silky, and it didn't really affect the way things looked when you stretched the foam or squashed it. You know, it was almost like they either airbrushed it or had some special way of getting the paint into the pores of the latex, which I think you can do with ammonia. But I remember it being really like thin, but very pigmented at the same time. Like usually it takes a lot of coats of paint on latex to get a solid color, but I don't know what they were doing. They were just geniuses at that. So I'm sure it's possible, but Ron Cole says, Peter Montgomery is the only one I've known who has manipulated the images of the puppets digitally afterwards to add stuff like moving belly fat and muscle movement. Nick says he did add a bit of warping to the Cthulhu shot. So how did that look? Did it look obvious to you, Nick? Did it stick out? Is what I'm kind of wondering. And Ron Cole says, I think weight and momentum are the two main things I think about while animating. And he says, I think digital squish and stretch would be best used for more cartoonish styles of stop motion than what Nick and I do. Yeah, I agree. But you can do it. You can do it with, like, for example, let me see if I can find a picture for you guys. Let me see. The one time I did it for Gentleman Films, we did some squash and stretch on some brains. Little brains that we animated for Cartoon Network. And I had this dental alginate mold. And we had, of course, melted clay for the brains, which I'm pretty sure I've shown before. And one of the things we did, or I tried to do anyway, and we used it, but I didn't really like the way it looked, was to, let me see if I can find a picture of it. Boo, boo, boo. Here we go. Cartoon Network. And, oh, here we are. Okay. Let me see if I have a picture of it. Alright, well, yeah, there is a way to do it, and this is one way, which is just, you know, if you're doing two-dimensional, like 2D/3D clay on glass animation, you can do it that way. And here is, oop, that's weird, it doesn't open in the same window. So here we have some stretch of a body and some shorts, and you can see what we did here. But the one thing we did with the alginate mold didn't really look nice, and I wanted to show you guys that, but I don't know if I can find it here. Let me see, is it this? Nope. I don't think I have a picture of it. I guess I don't. These are all sculpted, but the mold that I used, what I tried to do is to make replacements by squishing the mold and pouring in some liquid clay into the mold, which was alginate. And so I can only do like maybe 3 or so pours before the mold got destroyed. You know, it was alginate and it was small and it would dry out and shrink really quick. But we tried it and it worked, but like I say, it didn't come out very nice. So Nick says he added a blink. Warping looked appropriate with a soft octopus-like head. Might have looked bad with a hamab head with supposedly a hard skull. Oh, at the hard skull inside. Yeah, that would make sense. And he says, I think you can get enough squash and stretch by really folding up the legs and spine on landing, or extending the legs when leaping up. That's what S and S is an exaggeration of anyway. Yeah. I'd like to see that tried one day, but let's see. Ron Cole says, I've sort of done the opposite where I've adjusted poses to fix them in post. So like if there was something jittery in an arc, I can reposition things digitally to fix it. Ah, okay, so human head. Yeah, I understood what you meant. So basically any kind of a character with a hard underskull that is realistic would probably not work with squash and stretch too well. But yeah, there's a lot of mechanisms, and I think, Nick, haven't you tried, was it you that tried to make a breathing mechanism? I think it was. Who was it that made a breathing mechanism for one of their puppets? For one of their apes. Maybe it was Jeff Taylor. He made a really awesome breathing mechanism where he stretched everything out, but I don't know what he cast over that. Like if he actually cast foam latex or silicone. I don't remember what the actual fabrication was on that. But that's definitely one of the things with cell animation is there's almost no limits to squash and stretch and all that sort of thing. And I imagine with computers too. Like I think any of the films that were like Shrek, for example, I'm pretty sure they used a lot of squash and stretch in those films, all the CG films. And oh, okay, so Nick says yes with screw and threaded hole at your channel. Okay, let me see if I can maybe bring that up. But I guess I'm probably done showing this web page here. But it's really great if you want to go frame by frame, like I said. FrameXFrame.tumblr.com, FrameEXFrame.tumblr, TUMBLR.com. And so get all these really cool sorts of animations and things. So some, I don't know if they have any stop motion though. They have some CG, which I can show you really quickly here. Some more CG stuff like from Toy Story as well. But I had to look deeper in there to see if I can find stop motion. It would be nice if they added that in there. Okay, let me see. And go to bring up next channel here. Here we go. And you know what, Nick? Ron Cole and I have talked a little bit about probably making a show that is devoted to your films and your behind the scenes and tutorial clips that you have on your, here it is, on your YouTube channel, which is something we should probably talk about in the future. Here we go. Let me go back here. So here's the breathing mechanism that Nick created for this ape creature. Ron Cole says, if I were animating a character like Fat Albert, I think adding a digital bounce to his blubber would help a lot and be far easier than rigging a puppet to do it if you didn't need much of it. And you know what? That actually reminds me, in Coraline, there was a scene with those very fat that one really fat lady and the other lady that they're like trapeze artists, and she jumps around and there's all that fleshy jiggle. I don't know if you guys know the scene I'm talking about, but maybe they use something like this, what Nick did here. So there's a little screw mechanism. It seems to work really well. It looks pretty natural. So here it is. It looks like you use some sort of fiberglass, perhaps. I'm guessing. And Nick says, yes, hard to avoid touching the wire and the belly for the bounce when you don't want to. But here it is. I'll just pause. So basically, it's a aluminum type block, and this here must be a rod that just goes directly inside this aluminum piece, this aluminum block, to guide it from spinning as this threaded rod is spun. So as Nick tightens down this here, or spins this little threaded screw, it would cause that to go either out or back. And if he didn't have this rod here, I imagine the whole thing would just spin in the belly, and that wouldn't be very nice. And Nick says, the gorilla was old and decayed when I shot this, and he cut it open afterwards. And the chest plate of hammered aluminum sheet moving in and out. Ah, okay. And Nick says, the rod is to stop the whole thing turning along with the screw. Yeah. I kind of figured that must be why you did that. And is this sort of like a stopper piece so it doesn't go too far also? Like this, you've got this sort of protrusion here, which, yeah, it looks really cool. Let's hit one more time here. Yeah, see, this is what I was thinking I would be worried about too, is like foam rubber would have this sort of wrinkly problem. Like, it works great on a gorilla, but if you have a really smooth character, would you get these sort of ripples and stuff? Would they be exaggerated? That's where I know that Ron Cole uses foam silicone, which I think has less of a tendency to wrinkle, when you move stuff. But it looks really good. All right. I could watch these all day. Let's see here. But I don't want to watch these all now because I think Ron Cole made mention that he wants to set up something where we can do like a whole show devoted to all your videos, because you have a lot of stuff on here and you post stuff pretty regularly. So like this one here, have I seen it? I guess I have seen that one. So Nick says, this rubber was over 10 years old. Didn't crack like that when it was new, he says. Wow, that's a pretty old puppet. And Ron says, the rest of the body reacts to the breathing, so that's better than doing it digitally. I noticed that too, like even the neck area, not to get too redundant here, but it really looks natural, which is kind of cool. And I kind of recall, I think Phil Tippett might have used something similar in the T-Rex for Jurassic Park, the puppet that they built for stop motion to do their tests. I think they might have had some sort of breathing mechanism in that too. And then of course, Dennis Muren pretty much put a stop to that. All right. So thanks Nick for letting me show that, and I think we should show all these, just like have a whole show where we show all your videos because they're so amazing. And let's see something here, tutorials. Yeah, so anybody who may want to, watch some of his videos beforehand, Nick also has a lot of tutorials on tie downs and making build-up puppets. We We have how to make puppet heads. There's set making here. And to find Nick on YouTube, of course, it's just, as you can see here, the channel is Stop Mo Nick. So definitely check it out. Okay. We'll catch you later then, Nick. Thanks for stopping in. And Ron Cole says that Dragon Slayer Dragon had a breathing mechanism for fire breathing. Let me close this here. Okay. Well, let's see. So, moving along, and thanks again, Nick, for letting us show your video. I mentioned earlier that Ava Benjamin had posted a video, and this here is Dylan Markey. He's an animator for Robot Chicken and Pez, and he modifies a Nintendo Power Glove as the most awesome animation tool ever, as he sees it. And this is getting a lot of views on Facebook. A lot of my friends have shared this, and it's a fun video because he's so enthusiastic about it that you can't help but just agree that his Power Glove is pretty darn cool. So let's take a look here.
For your NES, now you and the games are one. The Power Glove, everything else is child's play.
I think what really attracted me to stop motion was the tangible access to mechanical physics. You're taking these completely inanimate objects and you're bringing them to life. You're engaging with the physics of the object in a way that really you can't get that access in 2D animation or in CG. My name is Dylan Markey. I'm an animator, and what I've done is I've created a Bluetooth Power Glove, which is a tool that I use to connect to the computer and control Dragon stop motion software, which is what we use to shoot stop motion. A few years ago, I was animating a shot on a much larger stage, and I needed to move from one side of the stage to the other side of the stage, and then back to animate the camera. And I remember thinking, like, carrying this USB attached numeric keypad all around the stage with me, and I was like, why don't I just have this on my arm? Why can't I just, and you know, for me, when I thought, like, oh, I want something on my arm, like, what would I want to animate with all day? And you know, this device, this aesthetic was the one that I wanted. I had to have a Power Glove on my arm. Other than the fact that the Power Glove just looks awesome, it's the quintessential part of my childhood. I can't imagine my childhood without the Power Glove. It was the coolest, man. It was like the first time you saw something where your body was going to have you interact with video games. And the way they presented it, too, was just absolutely incredible. They premiered it in this movie called The Wizard with Fred Savage. These three kids ran away from home to take their autistic little brother to the World Gaming Championships in California. And they got there, and there was this kid, Lucas, who had a Power Glove. It was the coolest scene. Lucas comes out, and he was like, I love the Power Glove. It's so bad. And you're just like, I love the Power Glove, too. Oh, my God. It was awesome. I didn't have any experience with it at all. I never did any electronics or anything like that. I was asking around a whole lot. A couple of my friends who did have experience with DIY electronics kind of stuff, they were sort of pushing me in the right directions and pointing me around. In the end, I ended up just mentioning it to one of the people who works in studio. And she was like, oh yeah, my husband's an electrical engineer. I was like, whoa, we gotta talk. And so I got in touch with him when he was like, oh yeah, you should just like make a circuit board or something. So we started doing some measurements. I went online and got all the other stuff that I needed. I had the Power Glove. I gotta just take it apart in like a couple of days we had this circuit board, and then got it, wired it up, and it worked. But I put step forward and backward on the arrow pad because I wanted to be able to click back and forth through my frames like this. I put play as the center button right here. B is capture 2 frames, and A is capture 1 frame. Those are 2 of the most important controls that I ever use. It's mostly these 2, and then this, and then these 2. But the whole number pad is really useful to have because there's all kinds of things you can program and drag in to be a keypad press. Anyway, so that's the Bluetooth keyboard, all right here. Then I've got this right here, which is my tweezers, and I put them on a retractable cord. And there's a magnet right here so that when I am reaching out to switch my mouth shapes or move my eyebrows around, I can then let go of them and they'll go right back to where I need them to be. And then the piece de resistance to the whole thing, I hit a little speaker in there so that when I fist bump it, it says, that way, when the director comes in and he says, "Oh, how's your shot? Okay, oh, that looks great, that's great," and then we fist bump and. When you get into the animation, when you get into a shot, you really lose the world around you. Everybody calls it in the zone when you're animating. All these stages are just blocked off by black curtains, and when your shot gets launched, as they call it, they close the curtains, and it's just you and the puppets until the shot's done. In order to be a more successful animator, you need to be a little bit of a glutton for punishment, really. You gotta be willing to stand up all day, bent over a table, reaching sometimes 4 feet forward, and holding those positions for 10 hours a day. It is a physically laborious job. Sometimes it can take up to like 10 or 15 minutes to take a single frame. You have to follow your thought from one frame to the next. You touch this puppet, then you have to go back and you check where that puppet was and where it's going, and then you go to another puppet, and you have to get into the thought process for that puppet. You're not doing one character and then doing another character. You're doing all characters all at the same time. The first thing I animated with the Power Glove was actually really special. It was for a show called Friendship All-Stars of Friendship. The episode that I was animating was Shigeru Miyamoto and Bill Gates hanging out in a jacuzzi. Shigeru Miyamoto is the CEO of Nintendo. He's the designer of Super Mario Brothers, and I thought it was really, really appropriate that I would be animating that sequence as the first thing to animate with the Power Glove. It was about 3 years since I first had the idea, and I've been animating with it for a good year and a half.
Yeah! Woo! Windows 90 high five!
I think in general, people have all but forgotten about it. Half the time people see me wearing it and they're like, "What is that?" Oh, and if they're under 25 or whatever, they're like, "What the hell is that thing? Cool, that was a thing? Cool, okay." It's just one of these things that's just completely in the ether, like it barely exists anymore, It's like, I see this and it's like the coolest thing in the world. It's like a cyborg arm, it rules. And people barely know what it is. I think it was just a really cool idea, but it was a little bit ahead of its time. To be completely honest, it seems like some people have made fun of me and said like, "Oh, that looks like the most useless thing in the world," but they're wrong. They're wrong.
So pretty funny. I thought, it's actually kind of humorous because he's he's so enthusiastic about it that it just kind of, I don't know why, it just makes me laugh. But it's really cool, and in fact, I wonder if maybe Dragonframe will pick up on that one day and say, "Huh, that would make a really cool controller," and try to emulate that because it's people, particularly like Dylan who are trying new things. I mean, really, isn't that the better way to do things than to have the control pad that is, tethered with a wire? I would say it is. In fact, I went to, my son and I went to get some ink yesterday from my printer because I ran out of ink. and somebody ordered a master course, and I had to print up a whole bunch of labels. And so we ran out there and went to Office Depot. And on display, what they have now are telephones that you wear on your arm like a watch. And so, technically speaking, it seems like the technology is going in that direction, which is kind of crazy. So maybe it's possible that that Dylan is really ahead of his time when it comes to animating in stop motion using Dragon Frame. But so a lot of people have made comments, stupendous work, so cool, and can't believe what I just watched. And so, a lot of people really feel the same way. It's actually kind of neat. So, in a humorous way. But Jacob says, "Haha, this guy is great." And Ron says, "I must have seen a different edit because the version I saw included his off-color language programmed into Power Glove." Ah, possibly. Who knows? Maybe there's like a version for, I don't know, TV? I don't know if this is going to be on TV or not. Not really sure if this is something that they just released on the internet or both. I don't know. But I was pretty excited about it. I thought, wow, that's really neat. Makes me want to get one now. Alright, so finally we have, this is a really short video here. Now I haven't seen any more videos besides this yet, but this is from ANC Studios. And they're making a film called City in a Suitcase. It's a stop motion, oh actually it's an advertisement, I'm sorry. It's a stop motion advert created for a travel management company, Key Travel. The film uses paper engineering craft techniques as well as pixelation techniques of animating real people. So let's check it out. I didn't expand that on the whole screen. I should have expanded that before I played it, but it seems pretty neat. Let's check out their main page, and I think Roos Matar was the girlfriend of Dan Metal Madcat for a while, who sometimes visits our live show. But they've got some other stuff here. It looks like they have a life in print. Shepherd Niami? I think it's supposed to be name. I think they just made a bad typo there. But Christmas Animation 2012. And here is the actual animation. So that was the behind the scenes. Let me expand it first this time. And let's see what it looks like.
Who would you turn to when faced with a complex journey? Across the world, thousands of humanitarian, faith and academic organisations travel to the most remote and unpredictable places and turn to Key Travel for help. We love taking away the complexities of travel. We're passionate about making journeys easy, safe and affordable. This leaves our clients free to focus on their goals of healing, educating and supporting others.
Very nice looking ad, I would say. Very nice. I like how they did these little replacements here where they start small and get big. And it walks across. All made out of paper. Very nice. And then how they I don't know if that was, let's see here. They got a lot of fine movements out of these little paper guys too. They sort of look like stick fizz that we used to sell, but paper stick fizz. And we saw that those planes were blue screened in. You can see how that looks. A really nice compositing job too. I can't really tell. I mean, you can kind of tell. There's a little bit of like translucency to the wings, but it looks really great. They put the little characters back in there, and again they shrink down and interact with everything. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, what do you guys think about that? I like it. Very nice. Okay, well anyway, I guess that does conclude our show. I was going to show some more stuff from the Lone Animator, but maybe next week we can do that. I want to thank you guys for stopping by, and if you guys have any suggestions for the show, just write to me at mark@animateclay.com, and see you guys all next week.